The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual guests. If you're a sensitive snowflake that may get easily offended, then turn this off immediately. If you want to hear the real truth about the gun culture, then stick around. This is the Armed Citizen Podcast. What is going on, my Ghost Squad? Welcome to the Armed Citizen Podcast live. This is episode 110. We are live as always on YouTube and simulcasting as always over on gunchannels.com. And if you're not familiar with gunchannels.com, then come check us out. The water's warm. We try not to bite too bad, and it's a great pro gun 2A community coming up on its 6th birthday here in November. It was built by gun owners for gun owners to have discussions just like this. So come on over and check us out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, especially if you're new to the community, new to the firearm industry, new to the culture. There's all sorts of people over there that are always hanging out. If you have questions about anything, there's always a helpful hand to help you down there. We want to say hello to everybody who's live. If you're out there on the YouTube side, please say hello. We can't see you unless you say something in the chat. If you have a question for any of us throughout the podcast, please go ahead and ask that question and tag one of us. If you want to, you can text it, any question, to 530-364-4678 or 530-36-GHOST. You can go ahead and send those questions. If you do send us a text, please, within the text, let us know who you are, so we're just not reading some random person's questions out there. And if you're watching in replay or listening in podcast form, if you have any questions for myself or the guests, please use that comment section below. We'll be more than happy to get to those questions and answer them as quickly as possible. And if they're for Riley or for Clover and I can't answer them, then I will make sure that they get those questions as well. So, guys, we've got a good show tonight. We've got Riley from concealedcarry.com. What's going on, Riley?
A little slow on the mute button there.
It's all good.
What's up? I clicked at it 3 times and the mouse kept moving past. But anyway, I'm good, man.
Different for you being on the opposite side of StreamYard, where you used to running. Well, you ran it a couple times, didn't you, for your own podcast?
Yeah. We've been using StreamYard for 3 or 4 episodes now. So just still kind of checking it out and also still learning it, but it's a pretty cool program. So very excited about StreamYard and what it means for our shows.
Yeah, I haven't gone into the paid version. I'm still using it because I'm still seeing if I like it or not. And I do like certain aspects of it. I do like the fact that you only have 6 people, but you can have, for us, if we have a round table or is an open forum discussion, I can get a link to a bunch of people. And even though they're not on this chat, I can see who's backstage and you can kind of move them in and out. And if someone does get a hold of the link that I don't necessarily want on the show, I don't have to bring them into the show. So that's always helpful too. But no, I kind of like it. There are some other options out there, but I think for what I use it for, I like it so far a lot. So far we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And our quasi co-host from Texas, the tactical leprechaun himself. What's up, Clove? How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm here.
You are? Oh, good. Yeah. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure, so you've been working, doing a renovation in the house, so maybe you
I don't want to talk about that. Moving on.
Yeah, right. Let's see here. Gear Report out there says you need knights. I don't know what that means, but thank you. Oh, for my round table. Yeah, Jeff, you probably are going to be part of that round table if I ever have one, but it's all good. We'll see you soon, buddy. Jeff and Toby and JJ and all the good people over at Gear Report that Clover and I both write for. So good people. Go check out gearreport.com. But tonight we're going to talk concealed carry, not just the idea of concealed carry, but with Riley, he hosts the Concealed Carry podcast over on concealedcarry.com and is part of that brand over there. So we're going to talk to Riley a little bit about concealedcarry.com, Guardian Nation, the podcast itself, and then we're going to just kind of discuss concealed carry in general. And towards the end, we've got some some hot topic questions. We like to run some of the guests through and kind of a rapid fire type thing. So if you guys have any questions on the website, the podcast, everything that Riley and those guys and Jacob and Matthew and all those guys over at Concealed Carry do over there, go ahead and like I said, put them out there on the side chat and make sure you tag us and we'll get it going. But let's bring in Riley back real quick and kind of discuss, for those that have never heard of concealedcarry.com or never went to the website, can you kind of explain the idea and the concept of concealedcarry.com?
Well, the hope is for one day, especially because I don't think it's totally there yet. But the website, we hope, will be the one-stop shop for anything, everything concealed carry related. A place that, the first place really that people will think about when they're looking for concealed carry information, education, products, gear, training, all of that. I mean, a lot of it is actually there, but it's, we're still a small team and we have a lot going on. And so it's always a work in progress. But, the site is pretty robust as far as what's on the site. I mean, we've got news and articles and training related stuff. We've got our whole online store, which to date has, I don't know, we don't keep track that closely, or at least I don't, 700, 800 plus products probably on our store. Everything from training gear, videos, books, holsters, optics. I mean, just all kinds of stuff on our website.
Well,
and the online store.
You got everything.
Yeah. We've got a business directory. I mean, if you want to find businesses that support concealed carry, if you want to find gun ranges, shops, dealers, gun-free zones, all that kind of stuff. We've got legal information. You want to find information on various states. If you're traveling, you want to look up laws for Ohio or Indiana or Illinois or Texas or whatever. We got information on insurance. We've got reciprocity maps for concealed carry. I mean, as you can see, like, part of the challenge of bringing the whole site into one and making it cohesive is a big challenge. We just are happy that it works most of the time.
I hear you. And I know you guys are running the thing right now through the shop. It's the No Gun Control Week. So if you guys head over to concealedcarry.com, I'll put the links out there in the chat. And if you go do some shopping for 20% off, I think you have the code No Gun Control 2019 or something like that. So you guys go there
right.
and help them out, because like I said, this is a phenomenal resource. It's not just a website, but the resources there are endless. And I go over there all the time. Now you have something over there that I kind of think is cool that people might be interested in. It's called Guardian Nation. And I know Guardian Nation is kind of the membership type thing where you've got podcasts that you guys do a couple times a week, but you have podcasts specifically for the Guardian Nation. You have shooter videos. I think you get a percentage off no matter what product you buy and all that, and you get a gearbox and all that. So is the Guardian Nation, is that something new, or was that from the beginning?
So actually we're into this month is our third anniversary of the existence of Guardian Nation. And you're right. Guardian Nation, all it is our paid member zone, so that's if you're a Guardian Nation member, there's things that are behind the paywall that are accessible to members only. You're right about things like the 10% discount. That's a 10% discount all the time for members off every product on our site. That's even if we're running a sale. So like right now we have that No Gun Control Week, whatever, sale going on, 20%. Well, members are actually saving 30%. That 10% is always tacked on to other promotions we have going on as well. So that's pretty cool. The idea there was we wanted to create a membership so over the years, there's been kind of all these different terms and things that are thrown out there to describe kind of the self-defense mindset, like sheepdog, for instance. And that's kind of, got kind of a negative connotation these days, or it's not as popular as it once was. And, so we were kind of thinking, like, what describes primarily a civilian defensive-minded individual, and so we thought, hey, it's a Guardian is kind of it's what we settled on. So we decided to call it Guardian Nation. Our goal is to actually create or help or influence folks in becoming Guardians, and we actually have a company goal of producing 1 million Guardians by the year 2050, which is a long ways out.
Oh,
so,
okay.
seems like that's probably achievable. And I hope to be around all that time. I'll be a pretty old man in 2050. But anyway, that's the goal. And so, we want to create that resource for paying members to become Guardians. So in there's special training information, videos, content, access to special offers. We have discounts. I mean, we've got ammo discounts from ammosupplywarehouse.com. We've got discounts off of memberships like CCW Safe if you're interested in some kind of self-defense coverage. So we've got discounts to all kinds of different things. You're right about the box. So we ship every quarter, once a quarter, we ship a box of gear. And and we try to make it actually good, useful gear, because everybody knows if you've ever tried any of those gears or those box subscriptions, that most of them are pure crap, or at least you think like they advertise them as being like this super awesome, whatever thing, like the survival box or whatever, and like, oh, I'm gonna get all this sweet survival gear, and then you get it, and half of it's cheap crap from China that you're just going to throw away, or it's not usable, or some of it's not even relevant to what you thought you were actually getting. And so we've tried to make that box actually relevant and useful stuff. And it's really hard and it's really challenging, especially because to make the numbers work, and this is our commitment to our members, is that box is sent out once a quarter. And if you are a member for the preceding quarter, then you qualify to receive that box. So basically for 3 months, if you're a paying member, then you qualify to receive that next box. And we guarantee you that the value of the box will meet and it actually always exceeds what you pay in membership dues. And so no matter which way you look at it, if you are just thrilled about the box and you joined because of the box, then you are definitely getting your money's worth back in just the box. And then all the other benefits of Guardian Nation membership are icing on the cake. Or maybe you enjoy all the other benefits and the box is the icing on the cake, So either way, you're getting a lot more, as we see it, than what you're paying for. So 3 years now, Guardian Nation. We've got quite a few members. Would love to see that continue to grow, obviously. But yeah,
I'm going to put been putting links out there, but I am going to put the link for the Guardian Nation out there in the chat as well. Please go check that out. It's good stuff. Clover, want to bring you in real quick. Do you have any questions or anything you want to bring up with Riley real quick?
Yeah, I want a little backstory on a little bit of Riley's background and how all the concealedcarry.com came about.
All right. So my backstory. Probably about 10 years ago, I got into law enforcement and did that for a time, actually, as a reserve officer. And I'm still actually on the rolls, but I've been on a very long leave of absence for the last little bit, because I took a leave of absence because things started really picking up steam with concealedcarry.com, and I'm like, guys, I got to take a break so I can focus on this. And I probably ought to just tender my resignation, because I don't know that I'm going to ever have the available time now to go back to covering shifts or going on duty or anything like that. But I'm also a law enforcement instructor on handgun and patrol rifle, and enjoy doing that very much. Training, our agency here in Colorado, and doing that sort of thing. So that's a lot of fun to me. But I became an instructor and started doing that. Jacob is the founder and president of concealedcarry.com. Actually, the website, we've actually only owned the domain for, let's see, it'll be, I think, 3 years this January. So before that, we were usafirearmtraining.com. It had always been a long-term goal to try to obtain concealedcarry.com as a domain, and it took some effort to get there and a chunk of change. And so that was a little less than 3 years ago that we obtained the domain finally successfully. That was a pretty exciting time for us, obviously. And so yeah, 4 years ago I came on board full time working together with Jacob. He left his day job, and 2 months later he came to me and said, "Dude, like this is taking off. I need you to leave your day job and come and do this thing." And so yeah, that's kind of the history there. So now full time every day of the week I study, eat, drink, sleep, dream about concealed carry, teaching people about it, best practices. Doing our podcast, creating our other content, that sort of thing. And I'm really blessed.
Now, are there certain trainings or continuing education that you've got to keep up with for not only for the law enforcement training side, instructor side of things, but also your peace officer license?
So yeah, there is ongoing training. Yes, that is true. And I do take continuing education. So I've trained with guys like Kyle Lamb, Dave Spalding. There's a list. Jeff Gonzalez. I'm a graduate of Trident Concepts concealed carry instructor course, which is it's a good course. If you ever get the chance to take that from Jeff, I highly recommend it. I'm actually training here in like 3 weeks with Mike Seeklander and Rob Latham. I've also been a competitive shooter for the last several years and do pretty well there. But yeah, I've taken a bunch of different courses through the years. I'm definitely passionate about training and education for myself. I think that's a mark of a good instructor, is that they continue to learn and study. And I was actually just talking about this on my podcast the other day about how I'm really impressed by guys like, say, Dave Spalding, who just, I think last month was taking a class from Scott Jedlinski, I think it was, taking a Red Dot course. And like, that's really cool to me that somebody that's been in the industry as long as he has, like Dave Spalding, and is well regarded as an instructor, but yet is putting himself out there. He doesn't have such a, so big a head that as to prevent himself from, taking somebody else's course. So yeah, that's something that I try to get about 80 hours of training for myself in, like legit, verifiable, documented training every year.
Yep. I'm a training junkie, and I've been all over the place and done all sorts of cool stuff, both military and in the private sector. Yeah, I'm a training junkie. Clover is not so much. He is not real big on the training aspect, but that's okay. Everyone's got their own vices. But a lot of people ask me all the time, "Hey, I live in this part of the country. Who's a good person to go get some training from?" And I'll tell them, people that I've trained with in those areas. And they say, "Well, have you ever heard of this person? And this is a local guy. What do you think of local guys?" There are some phenomenal local trainers out there that just either don't want to be huge or they haven't made it to that point yet. But going back to kind of what you were saying is I'll always say, hey, if you're looking at someone to train, go find out who they train with. Who do they go? And if you are going to be a trainer out there, but you're not always looking to expand your knowledge, and every instructor that I know that's worth their weight in salt, they go somewhere else to get from, different places. I mean, you talk to Yeager, and Yeager says, "Man, I make a journey up to Oregon every year to go see Clint Smith, no matter what." There's just different, all the good ones, they go train with other people. And it's not because they need more information, because you're always going to learn information. But I think more than anything else, it's get a different perspective and all of that. So, if you guys are out there and you say, "Hey, I went to this guy and he's great. He's the only person we're going to go to," expand a little bit. There's always great instructors out there, especially locally. You never know. If you're wondering about an instructor, go audit their class. Call them and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about taking your class. Can I come out and watch for a little bit?" Most instructors that are confident in what they're teaching will have no problem with you coming out there and auditing their class before you decide if you want to take that. So if you find someone out there, guys, that say, "No, I don't want to do that," just saying. Yeah. We do have a question from the crowd, and then this is from Patron of the Dark. He's a fellow Marine. he was wondering to know, let me get back up here. He asked, everyone practices at distance, but does anyone practice at arm's length? And how do you train at bad breath distances? And I just put a video out there actually yesterday on close quarters, on some stuff that I use for close quarters tactics with a pistol. That's not just hand to hand, but it's with a pistol. But I want to bring you and Riley and say, when you're working on close quarters tactics, what are some drills or what are some things that you actually work on? Or do you work on close quarters?
So I'm glad you're asking about that, actually, because we, so a part of the concealedcarry.com offering, we're really a 3-tiered company. We obviously have the online product sales that we talked about a little bit. We have information education, okay, and content. We're a content creator and educator as well. And then the third thing is that we are also instructors, and we have a pretty big instructor network. We have like 50 plus instructors all across the country that work under our brand and under our umbrella. And I'm really proud of that fact, actually. And one thing that people may not realize too about the concealedcarry.com website is it has 50 additional subsites for every one of the 50 states. So wherever you are, if you're looking for local resources, you can type your state, say like I'm in Colorado, so I can put colorado.concealedcarry.com, and it'll take you to the state subsite of our main site. And so then in the stuff you'll see on that site, on that page, will be kind of local or regional to you and where you're located. And what you'll also find is you'll be able to find instructors that are maybe located close to you, right? So you have opportunities to go and take training courses from those guys. Now, on a national level, and also here locally in Colorado, but I have taken the course on the road here and there as well. Mm-hmm. But a couple of years ago, and really just in this last year, we really got it kind of kicked off a little bit more aggressively. But I wrote and created a curriculum that we refer to as our Guardian curriculum. And we have what we call our Triple Guardian course. It's actually 3 courses. And that is 3 individual defensive handgun courses that quite often are taught back to back to back over 3 days. Or sometimes they're offered, first day or the second day, here and there, and then every once in a while we have the third day, just kind of like whatever meets the local needs the best. But here's where I'm going with all this. One thing that was really important to me for that curriculum is that it was more geared around realistic civilian encounters. And so in that course, you spend the bulk of your time shooting and training at 7 yards or less, and probably more often at about 5 yards. It's probably the average. And so now there's no harm in, like, say, training at further distances, right? In fact, I think that's also important for people. But when we created the curriculum, the idea behind the curriculum was we wanted to make sure we provided, it's kind of like the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule. It's like, let's give folks, the true meat of what defensive handgunning, what gunfighting really is about and what's important. And so, and let's not get too much into the weeds on stuff that, while it may be arguably important, the probability of that sort of thing occurring is quite small, and therefore let's not waste our time. Like, let's make sure that we get people to where they are proficient at, say, 80% of like what's truly important, right? And that 20%, is maybe something that will come in a later course. And in fact, really the goal in our first day of training is to give students the bulk of what they really actually need and nothing else, right? So on the first day of training, we don't get into some of the more advanced skills. Like, we don't get into clearing, say, even like a double feed malfunction in day 1 of the curriculum, okay? Because it's probably not going to be an issue for most people. We don't even do a whole lot with reloads, because in most civilian encounters, you're not doing a whole lot of reloads.
You have to reload, something's gone wrong.
Right. We don't even talk about tactical reloads on the first day. Okay. What's the point, right? And so, and so along with that principle, most of the course is shot from 7 yards and in, right? Nothing beyond that. And so that was the focus of this is going to, like I said, be the meat for civilian defenders or guardians. And that's how we approached it.
Excuse me. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are maybe new that keep hearing the 7 yard thing, the 7 yard thing. For people out there that don't understand the 7 yard thing, what they say is 7 yards or 21 feet is an acceptable distance to defend in court a self-defense shoot. Much more outside of 21 feet will be more difficult in a court situation legally to defend that you didn't have time or space to get away from that imminent threat. So that's why when people out there hearing 7 yards, that's what they call a self-defense zone. And that's really kind of what you'll always hear people talking about. So I know that people out there saying 7 yards. I don't understand why 7 yards. There's a reason why 7 yards is kind of the standard for concealed carry, self-defense, home defense shooting, and all that. So 21 feet is that safe distance, if you want to call it. Clover, I want to bring you in before we move on to the next subject. Do you have anything?
Well, John, about close quarters. Close quarters is one of them things. One time I almost shot my thumb off. So when you're doing the whole close quarter thing, just be mindful of your position of that offhand. For sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's something to be, what people don't realize is in a close quarter situation, if you've never trained or you never practiced for it, chances are there's a very good chance in the close quarters, you're going to be handling that gun with one hand typically, because you might have your other hand blocking or defending or shoving away to create space. So you might be having a one-handed grip. So you make sure you grip that, because obviously you guys know if you limp wrist in a normal situation, it's going to have feeding malfunctions. So just when you do that, understand what you're saying is it's going to be one-handed manipulation of that firearm at times in close quarters. So yes, make sure that you know where that offhand is, because 1 to 3 feet away, you're definitely going to be going a little fisticuffs. And that's what my last video was on, is what to do with 1 to 3 feet. And sometimes you've got to block off an attack with a knife or a screwdriver or whatever before you can get to that draw. And when you get to that draw, like I said, guys, it's a different tactic than it is from 7 yards. 3 feet versus 3 yards are completely different tactics. So go check out a lot of this stuff, and obviously be safe, but know where that offhand is. Let's move in real quick to the podcast. And was the podcast itself, was it part of the original plan when you guys started the website and doing all that, or did that kind of evolve later on?
Shortly after I left my previous day job and came on board full time, so it's about 4 years ago, we launched the podcast. In fact, very soon after I started working full time in the business, I sat down with Jacob one day and I said, dude, like, we should start a podcast. And he was like, well, why? and I was like, because I've been listening to a bunch of podcasts and I think it's cool, and I don't see anything out there that's like a concealed carry focused podcast. And so I think we should start. I think we should be like, we can't say we're the first. There was another now defunct, and actually it was defunct even at the time. There was another podcast show called like CCW podcast or something like that. And I'll be honest, I listened to it, and I know that folks that started it were, trying real hard to do a good job. It wasn't, in my opinion, that phenomenal. It was okay, but so there was somebody else that obviously had that idea, but they haven't published a new episode since like 2015 or 2014 or something. Wow. So anyway, so I was like, hey, we should be the Concealed Carry Podcast. And so we kicked that off in, I think officially the first episode published is either the end of January or the beginning of February of 2016. I think it was. Maybe it was 2015.
Y'all are coming up on episode 400 here pretty soon, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, we basically, so for the first 10 episodes, we did one episode per week for 10 weeks. and I believe it was at that time we transitioned to 2 episodes a week. And part of that was because at one time our format was such. Well, our very first episodes, it kind of went like this. We talked about some news, in the industry and stuff, and we always kind of featured these. We've always featured these justified save stories, what we call them. That's justified save is my term for a DGU, a defensive gun use, because when a gun is used in a justified manner, it's because lives are being saved in the process, right? And it's justified because, so it's a justified save. And that's been our term for, I think, since the beginning. And so we started sharing those stories, some industry news, and then we kind of get into some kind of topic. And it made for a complex, usually long-running episode. And we wanted to be able to maybe get into things a little bit deeper on some of those individual points. So then we kind of split things up where we did like news, and then we did just like a topical episode. And so we were doing 2 episodes a week. And then a little while, and we've kind of changed the format a couple of times over the last couple of years. But so right now, still 2 episodes a week. Usually the Thursday, we try to publish on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the Thursday episode each week is usually some kind of topic or maybe an interview. And the Tuesday episodes are either industry news, justified saves news, legal news. I think that's that's the 3 things. So 2 episodes a week, it adds up really fast, brother. I mean, we just did 363 or 360. I think we did 363 today. I wasn't in that one. That was
you and Jacob and Brian were doing that one today.
Yep.
And they did a great job. Excuse me, goodness gracious. So I put the link out there to their Facebook page, because typically the live podcast that they record, well, it's the podcast, but they also do it live for if you want to watch it live, kind of like what we're doing here. They do it on Facebook. So if you're out there, the Facebook link is out there in the chat. Go check them out. And I love part of it. And I got a question for them I want to bring up here because it has to do with the podcast. But before we move on to that, I want you to explain what I love is you have a segment, and it's not every week, but it may be once a month, but you have a segment about the law, and you have an attorney come in and you do a little segment with, he takes something that's happened within the community and kind of breaks it down lawyer style. So can you tell people about that? Because I think that's a phenomenal way, because people don't understand that if you're involved, even if it's a clean shoot and you're absolutely justified, you're going to get detained, you're going to get asked questions, and there is a legal side of that firearm discharge that you're going to have to answer for, whether it's a clean shot or not. And I think you guys do a great job on that.
Yeah, so we actually don't have that segment anymore, and that's not
where it went. Okay,
that's not because we didn't want to do it anymore. It's more of a time and resource limitation that. So Andrew Branca is the attorney that we used to have his what he called the Case of the Week segment, and it was actually kind of almost like a syndicated thing that he was doing. I think it started with us. I think that's right. Where, we've worked closely with Andrew on a few other projects, and he said, hey, I'm going to do this Case of the Week thing. What do you think? A little 5 to 10 minute audio segment, and you guys can play that on your podcast. So we're like, we're in, let's do it. And they were very popular segments, and they're very, very, very good. Andrew is, frankly, in my opinion, the best at breaking down self-defense law. And he quite literally wrote the book, Law of Self-Defense. And, there's others that are really good at it as well. And in fact, the really kind of the first big self-defense attorney was Massad Ayub, and still, love and respect the heck out of Massad Ayub. And he's done a lot.
Yeah, he's one of my heroes.
Moss has done a lot for us, for our industry, for self-defense minded folks. And was really, like I said, kind of like the first that broke things down like that in a way that was easy for people to understand. Andrew kind of like has taken what Moss has done and sort of taken to the next level, and obviously Moss is getting kind of up there in years, and there obviously be a time where, and he's already kind of slowed down and is not as much out in the spotlight as much, so Andrew has kind of taken that torch and running with it and does a phenomenal job. And I would encourage anyone to go to lawofselfdefense.com and see the resources that Andrew has available there. And of course we still work closely with him. He got to a point he decided he was going to take a break for a little while on the Case of the Week segments, and we'll see if those come back or not. So,
well, I noticed they haven't been on a while, but I did love them, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that did enjoy them, because like I said, there's a whole nother side to self-defense that most people don't think about it, and that could be dangerous if you don't. There is a question I want to bring up to both of you, and Clover, you as well, because we all three do podcasts, but Kingpin up there says, do you have a lot of edits for a podcast before you post it, like a video? Now, obviously, in this scenario, we're live, so yeah, there's no edits at all. But for the produced podcast, typically not. The only problem that I have sometimes is when I have a guest on, I try to keep the podcast to about 30, 45 minutes, an hour at the most. But when you've got someone, we could be talking for 3 hours. And the only problem that I have with editing is sometimes you have to break it into three, episode 1, 2, and 3. But for me, a lot of it is just kind of editing what to keep and what not to keep, because there's so much good stuff that happens that, excuse me, for me, I try not to edit a whole lot. If I have a lot of ums or does or awkward pauses, yeah, you can cut those out a little bit, but I try not to unless they just are getting annoying. And if they annoy me, then they're going to annoy everybody else. So I try not to edit as much as I can, because I want the natural flow of the conversation. So that's just me. I'll bring Riley in. Do you do a lot of editing on the produced stuff at all? Oh, you're muted. Hold on, let me unmute you.
I got it. That's my bad. See, it's stuff like that I might edit. No, we don't do a lot of editing. Usually if there's an edit on my podcast, it's a technical glitch, which sometimes occurs. I mean, we're working with technology and to make these things possible, these virtual chat rooms, and things don't always go smoothly. Things go down. A microphone stops working, a camera stops working, whatever, right? And so those sorts of things, I'll definitely try to go in and cut those out, because particularly if someone's listening to the actual podcast, and we've always said that we are a podcast first, a video show second. We started as a true podcast. We didn't even start doing anything with video till like episode 220 or thereabouts. I don't remember exactly. It's been a long time. So we added that because there was a demand. People were like, hey, we'd love to watch this. And so when we got to a point where we felt like we could do that, we started doing it. And with that comes a little bit greater complexity. And so sometimes you have those technical glitches. So we edit those out. I edit out language, as far as our show is basically PG rated. So a couple things probably slipped through here and there, but we wanted this to be something that folks could listen to in the car with their kids. Maybe not their young kids, but like their 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds or 14-year-olds, as they're driving them to school, and mom or dad's listening to the Concealed Carry podcast. So occasionally I have a guest that drops an F-bomb or something, and I'll go and mute that or whatever, but that's about the extent of it.
If we talk about the next generation, which is a nice segue to Clover here, but we talk about the next generation. If we're wanting to have these discussions with our kids, and podcasts like these, you want to be able to have them be able to listen to them. So if you're trying to get out good information, I had the live show, and then I had a podcast. I had the live show was Tactical Tuesday, had it for a while, and I had the produced podcast, the Armed Citizen podcast. And I was talking with Cheryl Todd this is about 6 months ago, and I was like, I'm really thinking about, instead of having two separate things, just basically have, 1 or 2 guests on, talk about a discussion, and it be a podcast, but then we'll also have the video, and I want to incorporate the branding all into one. And she said, you should do it. So, if you guys don't know Cheryl, she's kind of like the godmother of all of the podcasters out here that, she kind of knighted that idea. So, and I love the idea when you said you're a podcast first, the live stuff, where before I was more the live show and then I had a podcast. So now I try to make it, even though we are live right now, we've got an audience out here. This is going to go directly into podcast form and all of our stuff. And so you want to have it somewhat like a podcast with maybe a little interaction with the live crowd. But I want to transition over to Clover because I know that you do several podcasts. And do you do a lot of editing?
Not typically, no. I mean, if I do, it's kind of a combination of what both of you have already talked about. I think it's kind of no-brainer stuff for most folks out there. I mean, technical glitches, obviously, with the duck, and mobile. I mean, that can be a pain trying to do some things. So I like to clean that up if somebody drops and has to come back in, and all that mess. Language for me is a big deal, although Friday I had Maj on and I could not for the life of me. There's no edits in that podcast, even on language, even on the F-bombs. My apologies if your child's watching that or listening to that or watching that, but Maj is so real. I went in and I actually tried to beep and I I'm to silence, and it didn't have the same effect. It didn't sound the same. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm leaving Maj's interview alone. But typically, yeah, I'll edit that stuff out because, it's one of them things. Language is one of them things where, by being clean and staying, PG-13, occasionally somebody slips. It happens. You're not going to alienate anybody. There's probably a small section of weirdos out there that are actually looking for cursing matches out there on the internet.
In the wrong place. Go check out Howard Stern.
Right. The majority of people are not looking for content that has cursing. They just care about the value of the content. Right. On the flip side of that, there are people out there, a measurable amount of people, that if there's a lot of cursing, they're just not going to they're going to tune out. They're not going to listen to it. You're going to turn people away. So, if you can moderate that, if you can keep that at a minimum, I think you're going to increase your reach, and particularly for those that are family, maybe they're listening on the way to school in the morning or home from school or, soccer practice or whatever it might be, especially if you're in the podcasting realm. And yeah, a lot like Riley, I really was forced into the podcast thing because I'd got that live stream banned back about this time last year, I guess
a year ago this time, yeah.
And so I was kind of forced in the whole pre-recording, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It's absolutely priority number one, so I'm behind on my produced content and everything else. But I like the idea. I like the live, and I love the interaction, and I love doing things like that and sitting in on this panel, occasionally. But, there's something about having the podcast that's out there and knowing people are free to download that and listen to that, at their wheel. Anywhere you're at on any platform, there's comments below. And so as long as I make it a point to say, hey, use those comments. If you've got questions, if you got comments, if you, want to participate, I'm not some big, huge, untouchable person out here. I'm a real person just like everybody else. Use the comments below and ask those questions. So, but as far as the editing, yeah, I think y'all covered it. Just the biggies and try to keep the conversation as real and as fluid as possible.
The interesting thing about the podcasting world is, until I started doing the podcast, I didn't ever really listen to much podcasting. If I was on the road or something, I would throw in like ESPN and listen to their podcast or something. But there's a whole nother world out there of podcast listeners. They're not YouTube, they're not Instagram, they're not Facebook. They're almost podcast centric, where they drive a lot. They're truck drivers, or they drive all the time, or they have an hour and a half commute every single day. And it's really interesting. The comments that I'll get and the emails that I'll get from the podcast is a whole different audience, which is awesome because I never really thought about that. I've just figured that, everyone's going to be listening and watching everything, but it's very secular sometimes, that you've got a YouTube crowd, you've got a Facebook crowd, you've got an Instagram crowd, and now you've got a podcast crowd. And if you're able to diversify your brand, diversify your message over multiple platforms, then hopefully your message that you believe strongly in is going to get out to a lot more people. So I've really enjoyed, I really have. I want to bring you back in real quick, Riley, and talking about the podcast again, is when you're doing a live podcast, you're recording your podcast, but you're also streaming it live to the crowd. When you started doing that, did you notice that your numbers on the podcast side, were they changing at all when you went to the video side as well? Or like I said, are they just two separate audiences? I didn't know the video side maybe exposed them to a podcast side that they didn't even know it existed.
Yeah. We I don't know that we really saw a lot of measurable change in the podcast downloads when we started doing the live show and the video and all that. Maybe a little bit, but because I definitely know that we had some podcast listeners kind of move over to the video platforms. But it didn't seem like it really slowed anything down as far as downloads are concerned. And so I do think they are kind of two different audiences. But I also know we have those that where they can, they love catching the live show. And when they can't, then they'll just go and download and listen to, the audio version of the show. And so that seems like it's worked pretty well. I mean, we definitely have added to the audience by adding the video component, and that's why we did it. We did it initially as kind of a test, and when we saw that downloads just continued right along like normal on the audio side, and then we're adding 1,500, 2,000, 2,500 views on Facebook or whatever per episode. It was like, wow, like we're just adding more viewers to already a very loyal listening base. And so, yeah, I agree that was like, again, that's why we decided to do it. And I think it's worked pretty well.
Now, Sarge out there at C4 Defense has said he's riding up to Washington with your editor. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Sarge is over in North Carolina. So maybe you have an editor over in Carolina area. I don't know. He's riding to DC with your editor.
Yeah. So actually, to that point, I was actually going to type a reply to Sarge there, to C4 Defense, that I am not able to go to the rally on Saturday due to a previously scheduled family event, and so I am very sad about that. And but I commend everybody that is going, and hope they have a great time. I'll be following at a distance, and if I can work it in to the schedule. Saturday is already a pretty busy day for our family. I've got two family things going on that day, but I was really hoping I could do like some live streaming on Saturday of like coverage of the rally, remote, kind of almost like CNN, would do, like, because I would pipe in, some live feed or something from the rally. We're going to have Mitch there for my team. We'll have Josh there for my team. Mitch will be doing some live streams and things like that. And I thought it'd be pretty cool to try to like do some remote streaming, talking about what's going on there. But I don't know yet if it's going to work or not. I have a small window, if it is going to work, that I can fit that in. So we'll see how it goes. But I'll miss everybody very much. I wish I could be there. I was actually invited to be a speaker, and it broke my heart to turn down that opportunity, but family is more important, unfortunately.
No, it is.
Well,
it is.
I don't mean unfortunately. Family is more important. It's unfortunate that I can't be there, but you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean. Excuse me, Clover, do you have anything you want to bring up with Riley real quick before we move on to the hot potato part of the podcast here?
Let's get controversial. Let's do it.
All right. So I try to ask some questions out there that they're not going to get people upset. It's just kind of getting a little background and all that. Like one of them is what brought you into the gun community?
All right. So what brought me into the gun community? At what point do you consider yourself a part of the community? I will ask that in return.
When did you take it from just being a hobby of maybe shooting with mom or dad or the family and friends to having becoming a part of a passionate part of your life? You remember was there an instance that kind of transitioned you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually just talked about this on my show, the most recent episode, which is not yet published to the podcast feed, but is on our Facebook page. So I was talking about. Oh wait, no, I talked about this in our shop talk. We do this Monday Facebook Live thing on our channel.
While you're building stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So on shop talk earlier this week, this is what I was kind of talking about. And for me, it was when my wife and I, we were expecting our first child. He's 13 now. And so 13 plus years ago, having that dawn on me that, oh my goodness, I'm going to have this other creature in my life that I am like nobody else but me and my wife is responsible for, his safety, his well-being, all that is on my shoulders. That began my personal journey to start pursuing knowledge and experience and training in the defensive world. That's when the passion really started to kick in. Up until that point, you're right, more of a hobby. Right. And, and even that there's a period of time that, kind of learning and figuring things out. Another transition point was becoming an instructor, being sworn as a law enforcement officer. But then, another transition would be 4 years ago, just a little bit less than 4 years ago, when I accepted Jacob's offer to come and work with him and start what has now become concealedcarry.com. That really has brought me into this full force. So I would say there's kind of like 3 turning points in my life for sure.
That's awesome. Do you remember the first gun that you ever shot? What was the first gun you ever shot?
First gun I ever shot. I believe that's a difficult one because the first time I ever shot a gun, I know I was very small, 4 or 5 years old. I believe that one of the earliest memories I have of putting a gun in my hands and shooting it was, I believe, a Ruger Mark II 22. And
now up, Clover's range. He
was corrupted from day one. Bless his heart. Horrible. Subject children to that. Golly. Horrible.
Well, he's a Buckmark guy, by the way.
and that was at a family campout with cousins and aunts and uncles and stuff. And shooting was always just a part of that in our family, in the extended family. And so, there was that, part of our trip that we went and we shot, and guns came out, and that's what I recall. It's possible there was something else before that, but that's what I remember.
Right. Of the guns that you own, what's your favorite gun to shoot? Like for the enjoyment side of things, what's your favorite gun to shoot?
Ooh.
I'm having you pick between your kids now. I understand that.
Favorite gun to shoot. I'm thinking.
Oh, take your time.
It might. Oh boy, that's a hard question.
Questions here.
I mean, it might almost change, week to week or month to month, but I'd say my AR or one of my ARs. I'm not that particularly picky, but like my competition AR, for instance, which is one that's provided by a sponsor of mine, Culper Precision. It's a really sweet custom built gun. That thing is just, it just shoots so stinking smooth, and it's accurate. That thing is fun to shoot. So what's my favorite one to shoot right now? I'll go with that one.
Probably. Now, I don't know if you're allowed to talk about all this stuff, and maybe you want to talk about this, but in your competition AR, what kind of trigger do you have in there?
That one has a hyperfire trigger.
Love hyperfire. Yep.
Yeah. Actually, and it's not the Eclipse or whatever. It's or their top end one. It's just the 24C.
Yep.
Which
straight or curved?
I've got that little plastic
You got
curved
the little
piece on there.
Yeah, love it.
I mean, I like straight triggers. You know, my SIGs, most of them now are running straight triggers, but on that, I like that little, you know, plastic trigger
You have
piece.
one of their grips. Have you ever used one of their grips before?
I do have one of their grips.
Man, I love grips.
I don't know if I like it more than what I already. I mean, right now I have a Magpul. What's the specific model? It's the rubberized Magpul one. That one I think I like a little bit better. The Hyperfire grip's fine, or Hyper Grip, or you know, they call everything Hyper or whatever, right? You know,
Right.
Hyper Comp.
Yeah.
I love Hyperfire's products, by the way, but I especially love their triggers. I've tried a couple other triggers, and in fact, in my competition AR, I originally had a let me think what it was. It was a really, really nice trigger. In fact, I still have it. I put it in a different rifle. What is that one? I don't remember. I'll tell you this much. I can perceive the quality difference even between this other trigger and the Hyperfire trigger, in that the other trigger is technically a better trigger, I think.
Yeah.
But weirdly enough, like the reset on it's shorter and the break on it's there's a little bit less creep.
Yep.
But weirdly enough, I kept freezing on that thing, having little trigger freezes with
Really?
that trigger. It was weird. And so I went back to the Hyperfire trigger, just like, okay, this is strange. I didn't have that issue before. Let's swap back. And I did. And the trigger freezing went away. And I was like, well, I'm going to keep running the Hyperfire, you know? And so it was a Trigger Tech trigger was what I originally had in that. And that was just one that was provided by my sponsor. Interestingly enough, you know, my sponsor was like, you know, hey, we're going to build you this rifle. What do you want to put in it? And I kind of gave him what was important to me as far as specs. Right. And I said, you know, Hyperfire trigger, because that was what I was running before. And they're like, well, why don't we try this Trigger Tech one? Because it's actually a nicer trigger. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure, let's try it, you know. And it's a great trigger. It really is. And I've shot those Trigger Techs on a couple of bolt guns, and they're phenomenal triggers. But weirdly for me, when I'm trying to go fast, pushing the speed, I just have this, you know, little bit of a hang up. So anyway.
Yeah. I've been a big fan of Hyperfire now for a couple years, and you know, I used to have some Geisley, and then CMC got some decent triggers for the price. But yeah, Hyperfire for me, the reset, and people that know me, I'm a big reset shooter. I love reset. That's one of the things that I really, I will take the reset over most of the features of a trigger. That's kind of how I am. But yeah, the creep is more than some. It's less than some. But yeah, it's just you're out there. They've got, and I can't remember the name of it, but they've got triggers for $100, $200, up to $250 to $300. So they've got them, and they're all very, very good. Even their $100, you know, base model is a phenomenal trigger. So if you guys are out there, and I'm not sponsored by Hyperfire at all, so I'm telling you, Hyperfire is real. I've actually got a couple of videos of Hyperfire on my channel. Go check them out. And I'm actually in the middle of a custom build, and they're going to be involved with that as well. So yeah, cool. They're great guys over there as well, and they're really, really good products. Let's see here.
I was just going to tell you, I liked the 24C so well that I picked up one of their patrol triggers, like the $100 one, and and put it in my patrol carbine. And it's, I mean, I have a hard time telling the difference between the two.
It's not bad. I think that there is a little, I think there's maybe it's a little bit stronger pull, maybe about 6 pounds versus maybe 5, or, you know.
Yeah, it is for sure. But
I mean, we're talking the quality. It's still crisp, and the creep is not a whole lot there. So yeah, I mean, $100 trigger upgrade is, you know, it's really nothing in the grand scheme of things if you're going to build, and you're going to get a lot more for what you're paying for. That's for sure.
Yep.
Robert, do you have any experience with Hyperfire at all? Besides, I think you shot some stuff at Terry's last year, didn't you?
Other than you know, range days and stuff like that, and then, you know, people I know that have them and playing with them. Yeah, that's about it. And yeah, I'll agree. They're nice triggers if you're into that or have a need for that.
All right. So this is a fun one. I always enjoy asking this one. Barring cost and legality. There's no NFA, barring cost and legality. What's your dream gun?
A tank,
that's pretty damn good.
a howitzer,
Who wouldn't want a tank?
a Vulcan 40mm cannon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that one would probably be it right there, because those things are freaking cool. I would not. I mean, you said barring cost, right? So,
Barring cost, yeah, you've got all the money in the world, and there's no NFA.
$20 a shot or whatever. Sure, like cool, whatever. I'll,
The hell not.
6,000 rounds a minute. Yeah, let's go.
Let's do this. I mean, exactly.
Brap.
So G Webs was over at Big Sandy a couple weeks ago, and he asked me to start up a live stream Saturday night for the night shoot at Big Sandy. So I started one up and basically screen shared his phone, and it's the most awesome thing that people have ever, when you hear a full auto AK, not an AK, but a full auto AK right next to a Ma Deuce, right next to the minigun, and you hear the distinct differences in sounds and all that. It's just one of those things. If you've never been around full auto stuff, it's one of my favorites is the Mark 19, the Marine Corps. It was an fully automatic, basically grenade launcher, but people wouldn't have any idea. But when you see this, and you hear these things, full auto is a whole different ballgame, and I love. Like a minigun, just the sound of a minigun is just about as badass as you can get. It really is.
Agreed.
Now, I've got one more question, and we'll start kind of closing doors. But this is something as far as the concealed carry side of things. When it goes into the trigger, this is where I came up with it. As far as your everyday carry, when you're going to carry a gun, do you like to keep your everyday carry gun stock, or do you like to, put in some aftermarket parts?
Yeah, for a carry gun, I generally keep them stock for the most part. I might do grip stippling. I will definitely make sure that the sights are something that I like as far as sights go. So a lot of times those get changed or upgraded. I've been dabbling more and more with a mini red dot sight. And so, arguably that could be considered sort of an aftermarket thing, although we do have guns that are coming out with them on them already. But I don't really do a lot with the trigger or anything on a carry gun. I don't think there's any need to. For a long time, I carried a completely bone stock, other than sights, Glock 19. Like that was my EDC for quite a while. And people, talk about, and they joke a lot of times too about, the Glock perfection and how, well, if it's so perfect, why you got to, change everything. And I'm like, actually, I don't have to change anything other than the sights.
You don't have to.
Because the sights on a Glock freaking suck.
The sights are trash. They are trash.
But I don't agree.
That's fine. That's fine. You just haven't seen the light yet. That's all right. No, but at one time I thought the Glocks, we're talking the basic, front dot and the little kind of outline box thing.
Weird.
Cup and ball. Yeah,
it's not bad. It works. I can shoot it fine, but I can shoot something that has a higher contrast ratio between my front sight and my rear sight better and faster. And it took me a while to realize that was the case. And when I did, I upgraded all my Glocks. But for a while, I just had the stock sights on them. People place too much into the into sights as far as like, well, I got to have my night sights or whatever. I mean, most of my guns have night sights, but it's not the most important part of the sight, in my opinion, because if I'm using a gun a low light, I'm using some sort of light source as well. I mean, that's the responsible thing to do. Okay, there are actually far fewer circumstances where people actually need and use the tritium part of their night sights than what people think. You do enough low light training and shooting, like you'll figure that out plenty fast.
On muscle memory alone, you should be able to draw, present, and still hit the torso of a body just from muscle memory if you practice enough. That's my opinion.
Sure.
If you practice enough.
Yep. So that's pretty much the extent. It's a stock gun, maybe with upgraded sights. Stippling is actually something that is becoming more and more of a preference of mine. So because I like a really grippy gun. Because really grippy means the gun doesn't move in my hands, like at all, right? And
Yeah,
so
I love hoe grips. I love the rubber hoe grip for my carry guns, and for me that just feels good to me. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, but it's the same principle. It's the grip. It's making sure that's not going to slip. I carried forever the M&P Shield, and I still think to this day it's probably the greatest all around design, weight, size, all that. It's one of the best carry guns ever. Now I'm carrying right now I'm carrying a Canic. But I kind of rotate through my different guns that I carry. But a lot of people will talk about trigger jobs and all that. But in the discussion, the reason why I asked that is a discussion I heard on another podcast last week about the legalities of doing trigger jobs, and if you are going to aesthetically with sights and the stippling and all that, but if you start changing the mechanics and the inner parts of the firearm, does that give an attorney, possibly a prosecuting attorney, reason to think that you're now playing with a loaded deck, no pun intended?
So there are definitely documented instances where firearm modifications have been used against a person in a self-defense case. How often that is a deciding factor in a case, that's debatable. And arguably, I mean, honestly, if you have a really good attorney, it shouldn't make that much of a difference, right? Because that attorney ought to be able to. I mean, let's actually use it as an example. The Michael Drake case out of Florida. This is the parking space shooter. You know.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, the guy that was arguing with the woman over parking in a handicapped space, and her boyfriend came out and shoved him, and he shot the guy, right? And he was convicted. And now that wasn't necessarily a fire modification situation, but what I want to point out is that dude's defense attorney flipping sucked, because they kept making this big deal about 21-foot rule and the Tuller drill and all this stuff, and the way it was argued was botched so badly, and all kinds of just misconceptions and even falsehoods about what any of that crap even meant. And so that's an example of hiring a crappy attorney or getting a crappy attorney, because maybe you couldn't afford one, and so that's just the one that you got handed. And wow, that really, if that's the case, that sucked for that dude, because his attorney just, there were so many missed opportunities. A good attorney would get something like that and would take something like that, including a firearm modification, and would show how dumb it is. Now, there's a difference, though, between mechanical changes and I would say aesthetic changes, ones that, everyone's seen the dust covers on an AR that says, like, "You're effed," or I don't know, there's a couple examples out there that kind of have those edgy sounding phrases and stuff. That would probably be more concerning than a mechanical upgrade to me, because that can be shown or used to show, or at least they can try to use that to show like intent and your mindset, your attitude, that sort of thing. So I always just say use caution and make sure you understand the issues. I don't really care what a person does, but definitely it's, I think, a better idea to not put something on your gun that could be used against you, even if it shouldn't be used against you, even if you think your attorney would be able to show that that's dumb and pointless to bring up in the case and has no bearing whatsoever on the facts of the case. Why do something that gives an aggressive prosecutor, more ammunition to come after you? So the best practice is to, I think, try to avoid those kind of modifications. Again, especially the ones that have, like smile, flat. What's that one? Smile. You know the one I'm talking about. There's like
on the dust cover, you mean?
What's that?
On the dust cover, yeah, I've seen some funny.
Yeah,
they make me laugh, but I wouldn't ever put them on mine, for kind of reasons.
But there was definitely there was a law enforcement officer that became a thing, actually, as part of his defense. He had something like that on his dust cover, and that definitely was something that really came into that case. And so use caution, As for a trigger,
come and take it, those are the ones that don't put come and take it on there. That's not a good look.
Yeah. So I prefer to stay pretty much stock. A stipple job I'm not that concerned about.
Yeah,
Sights should not be an issue whatsoever. Trigger, I think it's pretty easy to argue that, hey, the prosecutor's saying you upgraded that trigger and that made the gun more deadly, or whatever. I could easily argue just as much that actually in having a little bit better trigger made me more accurate of a shooter, which, arguably, is a safer thing. But anyway, you get what I'm saying.
Well, I think a lot of people also need to understand is you need to know where you live. And if you live in an area that, even though you're very pro-gun, might be an anti-gun area, and the prosecuting attorney has a history of prosecuting, different shooters a different way, then you just need to be aware of your surroundings and where you live and what that prosecuting attorney could be going after. If they're anti-gun, then they're going to try to find anything and everything to get you behind bars if you discharge your weapon. But if you're, I do think it's interesting argument about trigger jobs and all that. Last question is this. You mentioned earlier in low light and home defense and all that, using a light. Do you like having your light attached to your gun or in your offhand?
Both.
Okay.
So if you're in a low light situation, it's always, if given a choice, it's always the best play to have lights wherever you can, right? Having a light on the gun, awesome. Do you have to use that light on the gun? No. Is it great to have it there in case you need it? Yes. But if you have that, but here's the rule where it comes to lights, right, on guns. If you have a weapon-mounted light, then you must also have a handheld light. We're talking handguns here, right? Mm-hmm. If you have a weapon-mounted light, you must also have a handheld, because you don't search in dark environments where, it's different when you have a reasonable belief that there's an active threat that you're looking for, then you're looking for him with your gun with the light on the gun, right? But if you're just searching an environment, you must have that.
Yep,
right.
That's right.
You must have that handheld light, right? So now, am I comfortable in most situations having a handheld light only and having my gun? Sure. Like, I've practiced enough with that. It's not that big a deal to me. But are you more effective with the weapon mounted one if you've got to use the gun and you can have both hands on the gun? Of course.
No doubt. And that's something that a lot of people, I was talking with a guy at my local range, and he was so excited he got his first weapon mounted light, and so excited. And I was like, that's awesome. He goes, I never see you have one on your guns. And I was like, I have one on one of my guns that I keep in the house that I don't go train with or whatever. But I'm a big offhand light guy. That's how I was taught. That's how I learned. And that's how I do most of my training. And like you said, I practiced enough to where pretty proficient with it. Obviously, if it's gun mounted, it's going to be right there and you're good to go. But for me, it's not only having to point that gun in anywhere you're going to look in corners, around corners, or through doors. You're having to use that gun, but it's also going to be one of those that, there are going to be times that you might have to peek around a corner, and that gun, it'll be sticking out, and you don't know who's behind that corner. They could grab it, or if you go offhand, flash that light. If they grab your hand and it's a light, it's a lot better than them grabbing your hand with a gun in it. So there's a lot of sort of stuff that, goes on to the tactical side of things. But yeah, I like offhand. Clover, I want to bring you in real quick. And as far as lights, do you like gun mounted lights, or do you like
not particularly? No, I'm the same way. I'll put it in terms of FUD for me. It's sort of the same as these guys that have the thermal rigs, right? And they go out and they go hunting, and it's like all they've got is the thermal scope. And so they're going out through there, they're flagging, $18,000 bulls and stuff in these pastures, and you're like, dude, you need a monocular, you need something to scan with. All right. It's like it's okay once you identified your Yeah, once you've identified your target and all that, it's all cool. But yeah, it's not cool flagging a bunch of stuff because I mean, accidents happen and things malfunction and it happens. So that would be a bad thing if the stars would have to align, especially in a home defense situation. I mean, I truly do think. I mean, I can see your point, Ghost, with checking certain areas and stuff like that. And I mean, if your finger was off the trigger and what have you, I mean, the stars would have to align for you to flag want somebody in your family and it go off for whatever reason. But end of the day, you got a loaded gun pointed at somebody you shouldn't. So
that's right. And that's my biggest thing is I mean, if I'm the only person in that house and I know that I'm literally the only person that's supposed to be there, that's one thing. But you also understand is my daughter's 22. So she comes home on the weekends and she'll spend some time every now and then. She'll show up just to say, hey, and it might be 1 o'clock in the morning when she shows up after a work shift or something. So even though that I know that I might be the only person in the house that time, I don't know if it's my family coming. I just don't like the idea of at night shining my gun mounted light and using that to clear my house. I will use it to identify and all of that, but to clear and to scope, I'm a big proponent of offhand light. That's just me. Man, I had no idea it has already been an hour and 15 minutes. Man, it's gone by fast. But let's start kind of cleaning the floor and all that. And I want to give you an opportunity, Riley, to talk about any upcoming projects, anything that you want to plug for you, the channel, for the website, the podcast, whatever you want. I want to give you a few minutes to plug anything you want to. Will I spam the chat with your links real quick?
Well, I appreciate that. Upcoming stuff. I mean, obviously, we're looking to 2020. We'll be at a lot of the major shows. We'll be at SHOT Show. We'll be at the NRA Show. We'll be at the Concealed Carry Expo, like we typically are. And, we do quite a bit of media coverage from those events. A lot of videos will go up on our YouTube channel. So, folks, if, I'd love it for folks to subscribe to the concealedcarry.com YouTube channel. And that's quite literally the channel name, concealedcarry.com. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of that coverage coming up here. And then, we're like less than 2 months away from, let's see, October. No, we're less than 3 months away from SHOT Show, right?
Yeah.
So
we're inside 100 days, I think, now.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yep. Exactly. So make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Same with our Facebook page. There's a lot of content that goes up on there. I do the weekly shop talk on Mondays. We do our podcast live Tuesdays and Thursdays. Upcoming projects. So we're it's been kind of a soft launch to some degree, but a big thing that's been occupying a lot of my time and focus and attention has been the official launch of a new product that is called the Range Tech BT Shot Timer. I've got one right here, and so this is a little shot timer box that uses Bluetooth. It actually runs off an app on your phone. And our goal with this was to create a shot timer that was a lot more affordable than the other current offerings in the market to get shot timers in the hands of more average everyday kind of shooters, hobbyists and stuff. Typically, it's only been your more serious competitive shooters or instructors, that have had shot timers. And so we've come out with the Range Tech BT shot timer, and it's $75, which is quite a bit less than all the other shot timers on the market currently. Awesome. So
the Blue Pocket, I think, is like about $130, $150 somewhere in there.
Yeah, that's pretty typical, right?
Yes.
So now we haven't done our official launch on these, so that's what I'm getting ready for right now. That'll be here in like the next month or so.
Now, is that what you were building the other day during Shop Talk?
Yeah. So so our Guardian Nation members are some of the first getting their hands on these. And so I've been really busy because we got a lot of Guardian Nation members. And so one of these is going inside every box. And so I've been making a crap ton of them. I just got done building like 80 of them here today. So, I mean, we got a team working on that, but I mean, these are these are built 100% in-house by our team here in Colorado. I mean, there's soldering that's involved with the circuit board, putting all the components on there. We actually order these blank cases, and all the holes and the engraving and everything is done right on a CNC machine here in the shop. There's assembly obviously involved with the whole thing, and so it's quite a process to take this from basically raw materials to the finished product. And but we're still a small team. So we got guys pitching on Tuesday or Thursdays, Fridays. We got guys coming in on Wednesday. We got Jacob coming in whenever he can and working on stuff. And I'm here almost every day, building as many of these things as I can. So that's a big thing, but we've got other cool things coming. Some things that's probably a little bit too early to mention right now, but super excited. And, if folks are following our Facebook, following our YouTube, following the website, you'll be among the first to learn about these things, I'm sure.
Awesome. Like I said, thanks for coming on. I love your website. I love the podcast. I love what you guys are doing. So everybody out there, if you're not familiar, if you're not already subscribe, following, whatever the case may be, please do. They're putting out great information. The website, like I said, it's not just a website for concealed carry. It is an absolute, it's massive, and it is a great tool for anything, like you said, for law, for, permit, different laws, state by state, shopping. I mean, all the stuff you want to guys get. It's a massive, massive website that has done a great job. Clover, I want to bring you in, let you plug anything that you want to pimp out real quick.
No, I don't have anything. Get to the DC rally if you can, everybody.
Yeah,
that's right. Get out
for sure.
there. Can't go, share everything that you can. And, we talk about this all the time. And as excited I am for November 2nd, and excited as I am for what this community has done in the last 6 weeks to really go from no one knew about this to holy shit, there might be 20,000 people there, maybe more. It's been phenomenal, but I want to see what happens November 3rd. My biggest thing is, what does this do to get us prepared for the 2020 election cycle starting November 3rd? We all remember September 11th, but how many of us remember how awesome America was on September 12th, when everyone loved each other, everyone helped each other out, everyone was united under that flag? Maybe this is what the gun culture, the gun community needs, is to get there, get remotivated, and let's really start November 3rd. That's when the election cycle starts for us. Let's go find candidates that we know is going to protect the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, going to protect our way of life. So I'm really looking forward to see what happens November 3rd. And I know that sounds maybe weird, but that's something that I'm interested in. But,
I agree with you, man.
Yeah,
sorry. I was just going to say, what's interesting about this whole thing is that this is like grassroots at its finest, right? And there's people signing up for this thing, and they're putting together an email list, which is to get information out about the rally. But the commitment that the committee organizers behind the event has made is that email list and all that is being destroyed at some point after this event is, when this is all done. Right. And so what's interesting is, number one, this is true grassroots at its finest. And then number two, I think that this event will be a catalyst for everything else that comes next. And that is really important. I mean, there's some big swingers, some heavy hitters, some big players at this event, coming to this event, and tons of just regular attendees. It's going to be awesome, and it breaks my heart, again, that I can't be there. But, yeah, man, 2A rally. If you can get yourself to D.C. this weekend, do it.
Yep. I want to say thanks and a big shout out to Mandatory Carry out there. Mandatory has been supporting a lot lately on the podcast. I appreciate you, bro. Just $10 super chat. It says, I just saw the Instagram post and keep fighting. Will do, brother. Thank you for the support. Appreciate you very much. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Or if not, then I'll close with this. Go check out Clover. Go check out concealedcarry.com. Make sure that you're supporting all their projects. And anyone else out there, get to the range this weekend. Try. I know it might be cold. It might be rain. If you're not able to get to DC, then have your own rally. Maybe it's at your gun range. It's at your local gun shop. Go to your gun shop and give donuts out. do anything you can to spread the gospel of the Second Amendment this weekend. Get to the range, take someone new with you. If we all remember how we felt the first time we pulled that trigger, that adrenaline rush, if we can take someone who's on the fence about firearms, give them a safe and a fun way to experience shooting, then maybe that's how we change minds, is one person at a time. Get out there and shoot. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching in replay, like I said, please leave comments. Have any questions for us, please ask them. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. We shall see you. As a matter of fact, I've got another produced podcast dropping this Thursday. I just had a couple out this weekend about why is concealed carry so important. Had another one on home defense, and I've got one dropping this Friday, and so check that out on the Purdue side. It's on all of the podcasting, whatever you call them, platforms. Go to the website, ghosttacticalproductions.com. I want to give myself a little plug there. But get out there. Try to find more podcasts. I put a video out on Facebook, on Instagram, and different places, because I think the podcasting world, the two-way community, I think it's just now starting to see the benefit of podcasts. And there are some phenomenal podcasts out there. Clover's got one. Obviously, Riley's got one. You got Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Obviously, Ken Blanchard, who's kind of the pioneer of the two-way podcasting. But Gun Freedom Radio, I'm not going to miss a bunch of them. Sedini's got one. Our good friend Timothy Knight and Rebecca Schmoy's just started one, To the Republic. You've got Tony Simons with 2A for Everyone. There's a whole slew. Go out to your podcast, support all of them, listen to them, because the great thing about them is everyone has a different reason why they're in the gun community. We all have different ways that we got here, and we have different points of view that means something to us. For me, it's concealed carry, it's training, it's self-defense. To other people, it's more about, politics and all that. We all have a certain thing that we really enjoy, and there's a podcast out there for everyone. So go and support all those, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Appreciate you joining us. Semper Fi.